Hi, this is Charlotte. In terms of the vocabulary that we started with for week three, I think the term horizontal racism is the one that is defined in a way that I haven't really heard before. But it is absolutely true. This idea of people of a targeted racial group believing, acting on, or enforcing the dominant system of racial discrimination. I think it's a very important term because there are instances, if not many instances, of that occur um, in this country. And this term really stood out to me this week in terms of how I might intentionally focus on language and how to shift how I analyze a leadership challenge in my work setting. As a leader, I really find it very important to name what's happening and to be very concise about what I'm naming. And what I love about this course is that we are given and we explore language that helps us to really create a shared understanding of what we're dealing with, what's happening. So I really appreciate that. And I find that as a leader, it's very, very important that you create shared understandings. And having the language to do that is just crucial to that process. And in terms of how privilege shows up in my life, I really think that, and I've thought a lot about this question, that the most salient way for me is just being able to relate and to connect to other people of color. I find that in different settings and different contexts and across the United States, and in some ways in other parts of the world, it's a bit easier for me to make that connection with other people of color than it is at times with someone who is of European descent. So I find that being a woman of color, um, or in terms of privilege, how that shows up in my life is really being able to make uh, connections, professional and personal connections with other people of color in a way that I don't always feel that I'm able to do so readily with people of European descent. In terms of experiencing racism, I would say that I have experienced horizontal racism at my workplace. I work in a predominantly Hispanic uh, environment where I would say about 90% of my colleagues are Hispanic. And I love that. I love to hear the language Spanish. I love um, the cultural expressions around me. But there are moments and there are times where I feel that I'm being othered are spoken to differently. There was one example for example, there was a party, an office party that took place, and um, there were there are a handful of us as people of color working for the school, and none of us were invited. I happened to walk into a room and just see my colleagues, uh, all Hispanic, all of us out of the classroom celebrating together, but I wasn't invited, and it saddened me. And when I walked in, I could see some people felt a bit embarrassed about that. Um, and they were speaking predominantly in Spanish and not in English. And I just really felt excluded at that time. So it made me feel excluded and self conscious, but I got over it. So those are my answers to the questions to this week, and I look forward to hearing your responses as well.